With a population of around 400,000, the Navajo Nation has endured for around a millennium. Extending 16 million acres around Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, this reservation has been sustaining the Navajos with provisions, minerals, and most importantly, a home. However, what secrets lie deeper within the extensive canyons and dry deserts? For over 40 years, this Navajo community has lived with the toxic legacy of America's nuclear ambition.
Part 1. Uranium Mining.
Uranium mining has been around for hundreds of years. Beginning in the 1400s, it was used to create dyes, specifically a red-orange color in ceramics. However, uranium mining only began in America during the 19th century. In Central City, Colorado, a uranium mine was created in 1871, where over 50 tons of uranium were mined before 1895. Uranium mining continued throughout World War I, but was not a large industry until World War II came, when there was a large increase in the need for nuclear weapons and later nuclear power. The Manhattan Project, a secret project done by the US during World War II to attempt to develop the first atomic bomb, massively increased the demand for uranium as it was a key requirement for the bombs. As World War II ended and America entered the Cold War, there was a further increase in the demand for uranium as it was needed to build up nuclear arsenals and to develop nuclear power plants for more energy. America required uranium, leading the government's Atomic Energy Commission, the AEC, to sponsor a search for uranium in 1948, advertising fixed rates for ore and bonuses for discoveries. Studies that have linked mining areas in the Navajo where hundreds, thousands of people flooded into Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and the Navajo Nation in hopes of becoming rich. The Navajo Nation was quickly forced into the uranium mining industry, where the federal government often commissioned private mining companies to mine the uranium. Often, these companies leased the Navajo lands without giving proper compensation, as the Navajo government felt obligated to accept these companies' terms, as it offered the potential prospect of economic growth and jobs for the Navajo residents. During the 1950s, there were around 750 mines in use, with many Navajo employees, and by 1958, there were around 7,500 reports of uranium being found and over 7 million tons of ore that were identified. To many Navajo men, the mining seemed like an opportunity and represented the first contact with the U.S.'s broader wage economy, leading them to be attracted to the mines. Many Navajo families at the time were grateful for the opportunity, though oftentimes many were almost forced into the mines as there were limited jobs available and many needed the higher wage mining offered, even though they were paid minimum wage or less. In 1949, they had an hourly wage of around 81 cents to a dollar, which is around 10.96 to 13.54 today. They were often blasters, timbermen, muckers, transporters, as well as millers, showing them at the front lines of the mines.
Part 2. The Exposure.
Navajos and Americans did not have a very good way to communicate. Their English was insufficient and their education was limited. This lack and struggle of communication led the Navajo to be isolated from knowledge about radiation and its dangers. Many miners and their families have said that they don't know the health complications that came with the uranium mining, such as lung cancer, as uranium mining was associated with high rates of the disease. However, decades earlier, by the late 1930s, there had already been studies that linked uranium mining to lung cancer, and the importance of protecting mine workers from radioactivity was also well documented. By the 1960s, lung cancer began to appear, and it was only affecting miners in the Redwater Pond Road area, a place with two large mine sites and a residential area. Many citizens who were near the area, stuck between the two mines, eventually began to get sick as well. People began developing issues with asthmatic problems and cancer.
Part 3. The Spill.
United Nuclear Corp., also known as the UNC, stored its toxic uranium waste in a pond nearby. The waste was held in a tailings pond, which is a storage facility for the waste material produced during mining operations. These tailing ponds had several 100 million gallons of toxic radioactive waste, which would eventually be spilled out when the dam of the pond broke on July 16th of 1979. This waste would spill into the Rio Puerco, a creek bed which was locally known as the Perky. People used water for drinking and livestock. However, the water was radioactive, as a government report noted that the radioactivity was over 1,000 times the limit that is allowed in drinking water, as it was reported to be 26,300 PCIL, which is equivalent to receiving 1,000 chest x-rays per year or smoking 40 cigarettes daily. Though the water affected hundreds to thousands of people, newspapers reported the area as presenting no immediate threat or hazard, as the area was supposedly thinly populated. Though the danger of the water was known, many Navajos were not warned or told about the spill or the peril of the situation until many days later. The Navajos were blind to the situation. However, the mining companies had warning signs that an imminent situation was about to occur. There had been a warning of the cracking shown in a report from the Army Corps Engineers in 1978. The report also detailed how the UNC was told and knew that the dam had missing safety measures that were recommended by the company's engineering consultant. The dam had been reportedly as faulty a year before the spill had occurred, meaning the company had multiple instances to stop the situation before it even occurred. Though they most likely had ignored the recommendations due to their greed and prejudice, wanting to save money and not caring about the lives of indigenous people, whom they put in danger.
Part 4. The Fight.
But they fought back. Residents like Edith Hood formed the Redwater Pond Road Community Association. They demanded justice, clean air, clean water, and recognition. Many companies, along with the federal agencies such as the Environmental Protection Agency, evaded responsibility, with only 1% of the solid radioactive waste having been cleared by 3 months after the spill, leading the Navajos to begin organizing. By the 1960s, other Navajos banded together as well. They began a process of learning about science, politics, as well as organization, which would eventually come together 30 years later in the creation and passage of the RECA. Resistance furthered in the 1970s and 1980s by the Navajos. In 1973, the early Navajo advocate called Tome prompted the Albuquerque Tribune to run a cover story. The cover story led to the first legislation in the U.S. Congress aimed at compensation, designed to provide black lung benefits to uranium miners. Although the bill was never passed, even though many efforts were made by Tome, it raised more awareness of the situation. There was further resistance as Tome began working with Stewart Udall, who was the Secretary of the Interior under President John F. Kennedy. Udall went to file 2 lawsuits in 1979, hoping to seek compensation for uranium miners. Though these cases against mining companies were thrown out of court, one case was thrown out in 1980 due to the mining company's argument that the workers were compensated through the workers' compensation contract. The other was thrown out in 1984, as the court said that the government was immune, citing national security interests from the government.
Part 5. Reality.
The Church Rock story is not just about a spill. It's about how systemic racism, Cold War politics, and economic exploitation collided in one small Navajo community. Before the Church Rock uranium mill spill, there was another nuclear accident that took place less than 4 months before the break. This incident was the partial meltdown at the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor in Pennsylvania, where President Carter visited and cleanup began quickly. Those who were affected by the situation, mostly a white community, were compensated by the plant, even though the radiation there was 3 times less than of Church Rock. The Navajo residents affected by Church Rock uranium spill were barely compensated, as they received an average of $2,000, with around 200 people receiving those damages. In contrast, the 3 Mile Island incident had a $25 million settlement. Even after 40 years, the spill has been overlooked and still has not been cleaned up. Due to the spills, there has been a lasting effect on the people, with various studies that have linked mining areas in the Navajo Nation to higher rates of birth defects, kidney and cardiovascular disease, and cancer. The discrepancy in the reactions of the 2 nuclear incidents, with one being largely more dangerous, shows the racism and injustice of America. Congress and America in general has looked down on and taken advantage of minorities, and shown massive injustice against those whom they deem lower. Thirsting for power has come to the expense of many, especially those of indigenous descent. And although this documentary's main focus was to present the underground story of the Navajo Nation, it develops deeper, showing the racial discrimination and injustice rooted within America, its citizens, and the government.